We are here to learn from our neighbor, Cory Kolodji, who thru-paddled the Mississippi River in 1978. And he's guided canoe trips for the Boy Scouts, or he did that in the 70s and 80s. He's still doing some guiding through Ely Outfitting Company. He retired from teaching in 2021. Thank you for being so essential. And he hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2022. He is also, and I love this quote, an unrepentant self-publisher. So it's at the cross-section of those things that we're going to be learning from Cory today. So please give Cory a warm round of applause.
Well, thank you very much. What's up, Ely? So, wow, that's a great introduction. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time, but I have to start with a song. My son is here. He might want to leave for a few minutes. I love to go wandering along the mountain track. And as I go, I love to sing my knapsack on my back. Valerie, Valera, Valerie, Valera, Valerie, Valera, my knapsack on my back. I could go on. I often do. When I first came around here, I've had a lot of names and I haven't committed any crimes, but I've had a lot of names. I guess they call them aliases now. When I first came up around here, my name was Cory Godfrey. When I came from Baltimore to work for the Boy Scouts out on Moose Lake. In 1980, I married Doris Kolodji from Chisholm, and she was one of Ma Harry's guides for the Girl Scouts in this area too. And I changed my name to Cory Kolodji then. Her father wondered if I'd killed somebody. I'm not kidding. And so then we ran the Girl Scout canoe program through the 1980s. And when I went on the Appalachian Trail in 2022, seems like just yesterday, I picked up this extra name, Huckleberry, and I'll explain how that happened. I'll figure out this thing. I used to do this all the time. Oh, let's see if it's still on there. Maybe it went to sleep. Oh, okay, so here we go. So I'm going to talk about three things that I really like to talk about, and my son Amos can attest to this. One is the Appalachian Trail. I really like to talk about the Appalachian Trail. By the way, are there any other Appalachian Trail through hikers here? Yeah, I knew there was one, see? So it's not that rare a thing. And so I like to talk about the Appalachian Trail, and it doesn't require a lot of urging, and I'll go on and on and on. And I like to talk about self-publishing. And I brought a whole bunch of books that I've self-published. There's a whole pile of them here. And I'll talk more about those. They're not all for sale. There's a few that are for sale, though, too. But afterwards, you have some time, you want to look through to get some ideas about what you could do when you publish your own book. You feel free to do that. And I'll talk about my book, the book itself, the last one, To Katahdin Winds. So all of those things are things that we'll talk about as we go along. So I'm sort of a self-publishing evangelist, and I'm going to talk about what I know. And there's more about self-publishing that I don't know. You can find out on your own, but I'll talk specifically about using these publishers, Blurb and Lulu books, which I both used. Most recently, I've used Lulu to make just a whole bunch of books, especially special occasion books, like a whole bunch of song books for my daughter's wedding and for the 100th anniversary at the Boy Scout canoe base out at Moose Lake, for their campfire and for our family campfire series. And so on. So I've done a lot of that. I made a cookbook for the family this year. My kids joke, actually, if I do anything, like if I scramble some eggs, they'll be like, Dad, you're going to make another write another book? A cookbook. So I do that. It's a great hobby. We're a hobby that takes this does burn up a lot. But it's time because it's just a whole lot of fun, that's some more. So books that are halfway serious. One about canoeing the Mississippi River called The Adventures of Chuck Finn. I was Huckleberry Godfrey. Funny how I ended up with that name, Huckleberry. It was legit for a while. So So, oh my heavens, did I hit? I swear to one button. Mm, mm. So here are just book covers that I've got for some of the more serious books that I made. There's one about hiking the Superior Hiking Trail. So it's not a big book, it's a small book. And I don't know how long it is. It's not very long. It's almost a pamphlet, but it's detailed, eh? And then I kept a journal, and so I wrote the book when I got home. And then on the adventures of Chuck Finn and Huckleberry Kolodji, I kept a journal in 1978, and I found it in 2008, 30 years later. And I thought, well, geez, what am I going to do with this? As I typed it up, and it was hard to type up too. A bunch of it was washed out because we had really bad rains at Cairo, Illinois. By there, we had at New Madrid, actually, is exactly where it was, and some of the ink got washed out, and so it made typing it up more interesting. And then the Appalachian Trail book, last that I had taken notes on the trip. I typed those up and I published these books. And I'm going to get into how to do that, bear with me. We'll talk specifically in a bit. Like I'm an advice. I think all y'all have got stories in you. Some of you probably kept journals and stuff too, or wrote some poetry, right? And so nowadays you can make a book out of that. You can hold it in your hands, and it's really cool to do. It's just very satisfying, even if nobody sees it but you. Right? If it's just your artifact, your document, your souvenir, you keep it in a box under the bed with a label on it that says, do not open until death. That's how she's laughing, it's not because she thinks it's funny either. But so you can do it, and you might as well. It is not hard to do. Like I said, it's kind of a lot of work, but none of it is really hard work. And for me, at least, I mean, I don't know. I just got a big kick out of that first book, which was the canoe trip book. Man, when I got that in the mail, I held that in my hands. I just couldn't believe it, man. I was holding a book. I know it's not a real book, right? You're not really published. You didn't convince a big publisher to give you a deal, or you could be a retire early as a wealthy writer or something, right? But it's a book. It sure looks exactly like the real books look. Okay, and that's the cool thing, right? You can fool yourself at least, and it's a great way to share your story too. If you have a specific story about an adventure you were on or experience you had, or whatever, maybe it's just your life, nothing more. Yeah. So how do you do it? Well, did you keep a journal? Do you have a record? Even if you didn't write stuff down, maybe you took pictures when you were on that vacation somewhere. My daughter just came back from Africa. She went on her honeymoon to Africa. Let me tell you, her husband had no idea what he was getting into. And so she didn't take notes. She didn't keep a journal, but she took pictures. And all these pictures now have a metadata, right? That tells you, where you were, where it was taken, the time, the date. Usually there's a map along with it that shows where it was. And so from those videos you took when you were out and about and pictures you took, you could get that story back in case you didn't write stuff down. Now, all the photo sites will crank out a photo book for you, but it's not the same as like a big old coffee table book like that, I'm looking at it, looks just like you go down there at National Geographic and buy yourself a book about your family trip to Poland in that case. So I guess I'm beating a dead horse here, but I really recommend it. Now you go on to Google and you Google self-publishing. There'll just be a whole list, lots of different options. And I wouldn't discourage you from trying other self-publishing companies that you've heard of, or maybe somebody else has used. I can only tell you about my experience and make the recommendations that I do. So there's a whole different kind of formats for books, right? But that. And what you can do is, you've probably been to a bookstore. Remember them? They still have them in Ely. Yeah. You go to the bookstore, you look around, you see different kinds of books, formats, sizes, styles, and so on. And any of those you could mimic, you could copy. So any sort of book you wanted to make, a children's book format, maybe actually a children's book, to a coffee table book, to a paperback, little tiny paperback that's hard to read, like 8-point fonts. Give
that to your young friends. And anyway, so look around, get ideas that way. Yes, ma'am.
Have you do a little bit closer.
Oh, a little bit closer. Okay.
Thank you.
I am happy to do that. I'm worried about blowing people's ears out. That's usually my problem, is that I'm too loud, but holler at me or throw something at me if I'm not loud enough. So I use Blurb. You download some software on your computer and you use their software to make your book. That's how it was last time I looked at it, about 10 years ago. With Lulu books, you just use your own software. You make a PDF file using Word or Google Docs or something. And they're really flexible. You can add photographs and all kinds of stuff. Pretty easy to manage that. And I really like Lulu. It's a small company in a small town in North Carolina. They have good support. The prices are reasonable. And they're like a good community member. They're in Ely sort of business, you know, this part of their town. And so there's a lot I like about Lulu. You could use Amazon. They've got software you would download, and you use their dedicated software. And I think if you really wanted to get something on Amazon, that would be a good route, especially if you want to make a fully interactive digital book with global text and all that kind of jazz. That could be a way to go. And you can do that through Lulu, and I haven't totally worked that out yet. I made an iPhone, as sort of like preliminary form, but you can do that. I made a digital version that's just in a PDF form that looks straight on any PDF viewer, but it doesn't have global text. You actually have to kind of flip the pages yourself, you know, with your finger on the screen like that. It's not really that hard. So, and lots and lots of other options. So don't be afraid of it. Take some time. If you want to do this, just poke around. And I haven't tried the Amazon software. I spent quite a bit of time researching it, but I haven't gone that way yet. Okay, so there you have it. You can, through Lulu, you can get your books onto Amazon and other retail sources, but there's some other hoops you got to jump through. You wouldn't have to go through Amazon to have your book on Amazon. Like, people look at my book, they're like, I went on Amazon and I didn't see your book. Are you sure you wrote a book? And I could get on Amazon, and I haven't been able to do that yet because my book has a map in it that's not original. And even though it has citations for it, to get an ISBN designation for an original book, you can't really do that. So I think someone to draw me a map or something. So I have different source for that item. So anyway, there are little details like that you gotta look to. But if you're selling books on your own, just out of the trunk of your car like I am, then that's not a problem, right? So how does Lulu work? I'll go through this pretty quick. But you go on their site. And by the way, you're gonna make a copy of this presentation, the file available to people. All the blue stuff is clickable. They're hot links. So if you were to use a mouse and click on Lulu there, go right to Lulu's site. You can see all the different stuff they have on there to help you learn how to publish a book yourself. They have lots and lots of really easy to use materials in a lot of different formats, you know, from blogs to like a blogging mutual aid community to videotapes to a kind of a booklet, a book kind of format that explains every detail of self-publishing for you. And as you choose your size, and notice how I highlighted that, you download a template to use with Microsoft Word or with Google Documents. And the template is for the size of book that you're going to make. You can actually, you know, do all your writing in some other format and then just transfer it onto this template and it'll fix itself, right? I found it better to just work right with the template to begin with. So I encourage that. Certainly before you get around to actually finishing up, you're going to make sure it's on a template that will have all the margins right and stuff like that. The top, what's the top of the page called? The header and the footer, right? All those things, the right space and so on. So so you type everything up and you generate a PDF. You're always paying attention to formatting, and you'll be learning about that, how things ought to be. There's little things like you shouldn't have a word all by itself at the end of a paragraph. That's considered kind of like, you can tell that was self-published. An orphan word. Or like just one sentence at the top of a page and over the paragraph before, little details you want to look into, formatting issues. And you're going to see that I often suggest that you should proof. And you can proof and proof again and proof again and have somebody else proof because you really can't trust yourself when it comes to proofing your own work. I added photos, might not be appropriate to what you're thinking about doing, but you add photos and that changes everything. All formatting changes, you got to go through, look again. You make some decisions, that other stuff that you want to add. You want to add introductions or credits or afterwards, that sort of thing. And that has an effect on formatting too. You can have a table of contents, little decisions like that, that are the reasons it takes a long time. Like even for me, like well, it took a long time just to type everything up. I mean, that was pretty time consuming. If you'd seen my handwriting, you would know why. Partway through my trip, I ran out of ink. Yeah, and I was in a spot, I couldn't get another pencil or pen anywhere, see? There should have been one in the shelter, it was execute shelter, but there wasn't one, see? So I started dictating my notes onto my phone, onto a Google document I made on the phone. You think, oh, look at that, it just types for you. But then when you get home and you open that up, you realize it typed for you, but it wasn't really paying attention. Like, I'm pretty sure I didn't say that. Right? I wasn't even talking about that. I don't know why that's in there. And so even that required some time to bring it around and make sense of. So there's going to be some time going into just creating the basic document. And then after that, there's just more. You're going to proof again. Now you're still not done at that point. After you've done all that, it just takes time. None of it's hard, but it takes time, right? So a couple hours a day, you sit down at the computer, you mess around with your manuscript, right? Maybe you do it for 8 hours a day. I don't know. It took me 6 months. The hike took 6 months too, though. It seemed kind of balanced, you know. I mean, there's extenuating circumstances. And really, I was slow. I wasn't that slow, okay. But 6 months, yeah, it's gone that long. So I didn't do anything really creative except for writing the introduction and stuff. I say that, but you know what? For 6 months, I wrote stuff every day. Right? But maybe you're going to be starting just right out of your head, something more original. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how much time that takes. But you know, probably you're going to be starting with something that you made already anyhow, right? But if you're thinking about how much time it takes, it's going to take less time. You already have something. Now, I recruited people to proof for me, and that was okay. But they basically took their shaker of commas. They just shook them on there. Yeah, we need some more commas over here. I had English teachers, college professors. I mean, you're just not going to get that much from them on that front, right? You get a little spell checking and so on. But what they will really help you with is they'll help you know if you've got stuff they don't understand. Because you didn't explain it well enough. You understand it, but somebody that wasn't there won't. And that's super helpful. Or maybe you're redundant. I had a friend of ours in Seattle said, well, you know, you kind of mentioned this one thing. And then you also don't explain it. So maybe work on that a little bit. And so do recruit friends and stuff and family members to prove, but you have, you know, your expectation should be, unless they do that, they're professional editors. I have a niece professional editor. Yeah, it's kind of gets paid to edit. I said, well, you want to edit much? She said, well, how much money you got? Well, what's the point of having a niece that edits and charges? So we're working on that. I'll probably have her do it. And I think, you know, depending on who's going to see your book, it might be really worth paying somebody, you know, $300 to $500 to actually go through and edit your book and look for the kind of things that a professional eye would notice. So I had this book printed, and I had it printed again. I had people look at it, had it printed again. I opened this sucker up and I find mistakes right away. Right, a word that's, you know, it's not misspelled, but it's not the right word. I spell check suggested something, and I was like, yeah, okay. I should have looked to see exactly what it was. So yeah, so it's just not a terrible idea. So you hit publish, and then you wait for a copy to come. And with Lulu, it was like a month. It wasn't like 6 months. It came pretty darn quick. I was pretty impressed. And after that, you can proof it again because you see it in the physical form, you'll notice things you didn't notice before. Okay, so be prepared for that kind of business to take a lot of time. Now, I know this sounds bad, but if you're going to write a book, I think it's be a good idea to look at mine. Okay, and I'm not just shilling, okay? I've told many people that my book is not terrible. Yeah, and everybody I know that has read it has agreed. Not terrible. Okay, but actually, yeah, if you were gonna self-publish, look at a book that somebody else has done, they're gonna self-publish. You really get an idea of what's possible. You get an idea of what kind of limitations there are. You'll be, oh yeah, I see, that's what that Kolodji, what old Huckleberry said. You know, that orphan word there, or that improper word that clearly was a spell check kind of a thing. And you'll note that. So experiencing a self-published work is maybe a good next step, okay? So I did bring copies of my book. I don't expect necessarily to sell them, but I do these things. People are like, well, you have a book? Well, no, I don't. And then I get really mad. So anyway, now, so now we're gonna talk about the Appalachian Trail, okay? And my book is called The Last One to Katahdin Wins, and here's where that title came from, okay? One day, I was whining about how slow I was. Amos was with me, my son Amos was there for the first 2 weeks and the last 3 weeks of my head, and he can attest to that. I didn't do a lot of whining, but I did some whining about my slowness. One day I was talking to Salad. I don't know why his name was Salad, but his name was Salad. He was a youngster, like 30 something, right? I was whining about being slow, and he goes, well, last one to Katahdin wins. And he was right too. I wasn't quite the last one to Katahdin, but many, many times along the trail for 2,194 miles, I comforted myself with those words. That you don't have to be there first. In fact, getting there at all is really, truly a win. So, but anyway, these 3 pictures and one more that follows kind of summarizes my experience on the Appalachian Trail. In between these pictures, a lot happened, but mostly mundane things like walking, right? And camping and eating camp food. It's not like there were bears robbing the campsite, right? Or wolves or lynx. Well, there's a tale. I've been waiting to say that, you know. Not the lynx, right? But yeah, so in between a lot happened, but pretty mundane, but these 3 pictures kind of sum up the high points. Okay, this first is from Springer Mountain in northern Georgia, where the Appalachian Trail begins. You hike 8 miles up a mountain to get to the start of the damn trail. Are you serious? Can't we just say it starts down there and add 8 miles? I mean, come on. So you hike 8 miles to get up there. So that's at the top of Springer Mountain outside of Anacola Falls State Park in northern Georgia. Now look at me. Plump. I mean, I'm ready. Look, I got some meat on my bones to carry me through, and I am full of hope and ignorance and ready to go down the Appalachian Trail. Now there I am at my peak. Wasn't really much of a peak physically, but it's in Pennsylvania, more than halfway through. And I think I look good. Oh, look how skinny I am. I just look confident and strong, really ready. And really, truly, at this point, you're even a fourth of the way through with the Appalachian Trail. Most of the people that are going to quit have quit. And I mean like 3,000 people have quit by then. Like 3/4 of the people are not going to make it, but I'm there, and there's a pretty good possibility that I'm going to make it. And you could just see that, man, by looking at me. I believed it. I believed I was going to finish. Right? People told me I was. They said, you know, you're probably going to finish now. If you haven't quit by now, you're probably not gonna. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of good news, truthfully, because I wasn't so sure about that. Now, here I am at the summit on Mount Katahdin in northern Maine in Baxter State Park. It's the second highest peak on the Appalachian Trail, and it's the end. And this is the picture that keeps people going on the Appalachian Trail. They have this image in their mind that they want that picture. It carries them through the rainy days. It carries them up the mountains, carries them down the mountains. up the mountain, down a mountain, up another mountain, down another mountain. There's a lot of mountains, man. You just go up, down. But this is the picture that you're looking for. You know what? Look at that guy there. Maybe you can't see it, but I can. He does not look as, confident as that guy in the middle. Why is that? Well, if you are squeamish or have just eaten, you might want to look away for the next picture. Now, don't look at my abs. If you can tear your eyes away from the closest thing I ever had to a six-pack, but look at that thing on the side of me. Let's see if I can find the leaves corner. That thing right there. Oh, God, huh? I was actually sharing that room with another hiker, and I showed him that. He said, "Oh, you need to go in." I wasn't gonna, because I talked to my doctor at home, who was a farm girl, and she's like, basically, well, their arms and legs laying around. Well, get back on the tractor. I mean, that's her attitude, truthfully. And anyway, so I broke a rib, punctured along. And my first full day in Maine, after making it through the dreaded Mahoosic Notch, the hardest mile on the Appalachian Trail, and climbing Mahoosic Arm, I was minding my own business, going to get a drink of water at Speck Pond, where I'd stopped for lunch, wasn't in carrying a pack. I stepped on a wet root, just slid, so I fell sideways against the cut-off branch, and boom. Yeah, broke a rib, punctured a lung. So I spent 2 weeks off the trail, but I got back on the trail, right? And my wife, in her wisdom, sent Amos. He had just gotten back from canoeing to Hudson Bay from Lake Superior. The next day, she put him on a plane to come out and make sure I didn't come home. She said she changed the locks. She didn't want me moping around the rest of my life saying, "I almost finished the Appalachian Trail." So she said I'm there to make sure that I made it through it. Actually, none of that is a joke, by the way. That is all true. And he was certainly welcome company. So that was, the Appalachian Trail for me summarized in those three images. But there's a lot more to the Appalachian Trail. I mean, there's 2,194 miles. The year I hiked, there was 2,194 miles. The next year, there was 2,198 miles. Boy, am I glad I didn't hike that year. I don't know if I had 4 more miles in me. The next year, last year was shorter. So it goes up and down as they change the trail to get around property disputes or to get the trail off of the few places where it's on roads and stuff. But from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia, it's your choice. Most people go from south to north. They go NOVO, northbound. And there's other trails on the west coast. There's the Pacific Crest Trail, the PCT, and it's longer, but it's way easier because it's made for horses to walk on. And so they didn't want to make it too bad because, horses, people, don't worry about it. They'll be okay. Make it do whatever you want. And then a trail in the middle of the continent, the Continental Divide Trail. Some people make a point of doing all three. They're called triple crowners. Triple crowners? Triple crown, right? Triple crown. There we go. I want to say triple header somehow. That would have been wrong. And so they say that if you take these 5 million steps, you will have climbed the equivalent of 16 Mount Everests. That's how much the trail just goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And yeah, so anyway, the Appalachian Trail looks like this. Oh, walk in the park, right? But it also looks like this. Yeah, honestly, that's the trail right there. That's in Pennsylvania, also known as Rocksylvania. Yeah, now you can see why. And that's my daughter, Iris, who hiked with me for a week in Pennsylvania. I made a point of importing some company to go with me. Now you go through a couple national parks and okay, some history. All y'all that like history. The 1920s, these two guys conceived of the Appalachian Trail, Bet McKay and Byron Avery. And fortunately for them, there was the Depression. The Depression kind of allowed for a whole bunch of people that could make the trail. And the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, did a lot to connect pieces of existing trails up the mountain overlooks and stuff that there was, to connect them together, to build shelters every 10 miles. Just like around here, the state parks and stuff, have a lot of things built by the CCC guys. And so I don't know if the Appalachian Trail could have happened without the Civilian Conservation Corps, you know, we couldn't do it today, right? So, well, that would really go over, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we want to make this trail for all the hippie kids to walk on instead of going to work. And let's get right on that. It shouldn't cost that much. So the first person to through hike it was our Earl Schaefer. He came back from World War II and he was carrying many burdens, he would say. And he hiked the Appalachian Trail to shake the war off, I think was the quote, the first through hiker. And my favorite through hiker was Grandma Gatewood. And if you want to read a book that will really give you a feel for the Appalachian Trail, for what it feels like to be there, read the book Grandma Gatewood's Walk. It's fantastic. It's about her hike a long time ago, but it just feels so relevant. It felt relevant to my experience. I finished it actually on the trail. I read it on a Kindle. And look at her pack. Yeah. Ah! She was sleeping like piles of leaves. Honest to God. And she got finished. They said, how was it? She said it was terrible. Then she did it again the next year. Through hikers are crazy. Yeah, once her husband went to prison, she had time on her hands. Maybe that's what my wife is waiting for. But she read an article in National Geographic at a doctor's office. She thought, well, I like to walk. And so her kids were grown, and I know she sent him a postcard from someone. They're like, what? An interesting story, a great story to read. So yeah, it really puts a different spin on things. So hey, look at that guy. There I am. That's actually hiking out of Maryland after COVID. And there's all my stuff. And you might notice right away, right here, stuff that Grandma Gatewood didn't have, a whole bunch of electronics. I had a GPS tracker, you know, and a cell phone charger and a MP3 player, and a Kindle, you know, I have all that stuff. I was surprised actually the cell phone worked pretty good. Any of you guys cricket people? That cricket cell phone plan? It's like the redheaded stepchild of AT&T. Anyway, it worked really well on the whole Appalachian Trail. Better than I expected. And sadly, I was able to keep in touch way too much. But and there's what my pack looked like, all packed up. And let me tell you, I sent a lot of stuff home, man. I used to make fun of the people that cut the toothbrush in half. I really cut everything in half, honestly. You just want to get rid of weight. My pack was pretty reasonable, even fully loaded with 5 days worth of food and a couple liters of water. I was, I don't know, like 35, 37 pounds. You know, that's pretty light then. You know, in the old days, like I was going to hike the Appalachian Trail, you know, like 1979 before my wife and I were married. She had forgotten that, by the way. She was like, oh yeah, we were going to do that, huh? And anyway, we used to brag about how heavy stuff was. You know, my pack's heavier than yours. We were proud of that. I used to have a canoe that weighed 90 pounds, a Saliga canoe. Oh, that was great. My canoe's heavier than yours. I still have a Saliga, but it weighs 22 pounds. Skidlar. And so now people brag about how light their stuff is and how much they do with that. I was kind of in the middle. I was fairly comfortable. So it snowed. We want to guess where it snowed? Yeah, it's Tennessee. Yeah, the middle of April, right? Not in New Hampshire. It snowed a lot, right? But just for a day. The next day, it melted back. On the south side of the hills, there was no snow. The north side, it was kind of snowed, but not too bad. So, yeah, so there was snow and all kinds of weather. Now, people always ask about where you stay. And so I'm going to talk a bit now about where people stay on the Appalachian Trail. So when you go, because you could, you know, I was 65 when I left. You know, it's just one foot in front of the other, Dave. You can do it. And so anyway, there are these shelters. The original plan was to have a shelter like a day's walk apart. So they're like 10 miles apart. Really reliable. I mean, the infrastructure is astonishing, actually. They're come in all sizes. This one's got 2 stories, right? Some are old, some are newer. It's pretty common. This is a nice one because this got a porch. The table's under a porch. I stayed in shelter just for the table, man. Oh, it's so nice to sit at a table instead of in the dirt to cook your food or your little stove. There's old ones made by the CCC. some in kind of remote locations like this one at the top of a hill. And I've got 4 sides around it too. I stayed there just because it was cool. I wasn't really ready to stop. And this is a newer one made out of plywood. This is kind of a typical crowd. This is actually the largest group around at this shelter and around this fire. There were not very many campfires. I was surprised. He didn't bother to build fires except for Amos. You know, he's a firebug. But Boy Scouts, you know what I mean, John? They always light stuff on fire. This is one of the Smokies. In the old days, you had to stay in the shelter. You couldn't set up a tent until the shelter was full. But thanks to COVID, some good came from COVID. You could camp whenever you wanted. You didn't have to crowd into the shelter. Now the shelters are fine, except for the mice and the people. Really, the snoring and the mice would just keep you awake. So it wasn't that great to stay in a shelter unless it was raining. Then the shelter might feel pretty good. I mostly camped, and the campsites might be at shelters. I've never been anywhere where there's such good camping. I mean, I've never had a bad tent site. You know, with rocks under it or like really slopey and stuff. You know, the camping was fabulous. If you camped near a shelter, there'd be water and there'd be a privy, which is what they call grumpers, which is what the Boy Scouts call the crappers and the boundary waters. So I don't know if you all are up on your terminology. You know, well, that's how that goes. Privies were kind of nice, but not necessarily. I had a titanium shovel. Really, titanium. You should be more impressed by that, you know. Honestly, titanium poop shovel, man. And so you could stealth camp or as dispersed camp. Some states it wasn't allowed, but I did quite a bit of that. And so a lot of different campsites. There's my tent, as Solution Dive Big Ag. There's Tiger 2 tent. Man, I still use it. There's a great tent, a 2-pound tent, which is not the lightest tent you can have, but it's a really light, almost 2-person tent. So it was very comfortable for me. And there's a typical campsite there. To get a stealth camp, you can tell there's nothing around it. You know, I just found a flat spot in the trees. And boy, look at this. This is my favorite thing of the whole trip. This, I made this insulating cover for my pot. So I could boil the water, put the junk in the water, say junk, but you know what I mean. And then put that pot in that cozy, covered up, and it would just cook itself while I busied myself with other camp chores. Saved a lot of fuel that way. We should use them all the time, I think. If you're cooking over fuel, at least. Yeah, there's Amos. That's up in Maine. Yeah, you know, the lake in the background. Maine had it all, man. I'm telling you, it had lakes, mountains, rivers. It was really great. This is my favorite stealth site, halfway up Mount Moriah, and this is my back porch overlooking the White Mountains in the distance where I had been just a couple of days before. And this really was a fine spot. My favorite stealth camp. So I don't know if you could replicate this anywhere else. You don't find this on the Pacific Crest Trail, which is an older trail that's really well used. And I don't know if you'd ever get this on the North Country Trail. The North Country Trail runs through Ely. Maybe some of this kind of infrastructure would happen. But I mean, honestly, I didn't have to plan anything, which if you know me, really suits me. I just do, man. Every 5 days, I could go to town and get some food, right? And there'd be in towns every, few hundred miles, more frequently than that, every 50 miles or so. You could hitchhike into a town and find a hotel or find a hostel. The hostel might be right on the trail. You could get a hot meal, you could do laundry, you could take a shower. And you didn't have to mail food to yourself. You didn't have to do that if you didn't want to. It makes going really, really easy. Paddling the Mississippi River was like that too. You don't need to plan anything. Get some maps and just go. And then when you need some food, stop at a town and get some food. It's not like it was an urban experience either. Okay, so this is in Monson, Maine, okay? And if we go back there, Amos and I, we stay in one of those glamping tents. I say to Amos, I say, what's that tree there? Is that like a Norway spruce or something? He looks at me like I'm crazy. He says, this tree right here. He says, Dad, that's marijuana. Like, what? It looked like a Christmas tree. It was legal, right, in Maine. Actually, a lot of the Appalachian Trail are weed legal states, So It surprised me though, yeah, giant marijuana trees, and so one of their side businesses at that particular hostel. Hey, this same hostel, the guitars had 6 strings on them. A lot of the hostel had 5 strings guitars, which they weren't made that way, but they ended up that way. So typical crowd at a hostel, and these were all people that only had 100 miles or so left for the whole Appalachian Trail at that point. This is in the New Hampshire White Mountains. They got these things called huts, and they're not really set up for through hikers. I stayed in one because I did work for stay where you did the dishes and then it's like slept under the table. Kind of demeaning, but it was a good experience. And it's for people that are going to go climb these mountains that are around there. They come and stay there and day hike those mountains, get some 4,000 footers in, you know. So this was a ski club. There's no skiing in the summertime, so they took the hikers in. That's a good place. And this is Northwood College. You got a dining hall. Okay, they let you in. I came for breakfast, I stayed for lunch. And they were totally cool with that. They're really happy to see the thru hikers, the filthy thru hikers, that's the official term. See the filthy thru hikers come in. I don't know why, but they were really cool about it. So that's one of the high points. Okay, the Yellow Deli hostels. Some people say it's a cult. They're sort of a Jews for Jesus kind of cult thing, I guess. Okay. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with that. Like they might try to proselytize you. That's okay. They've got good food. They got a warm bed, a hot shower. They got laundry. It's okay to proselytize your brains out. But they're actually really interesting folks. Yes, a little kind of Christian Amish thing going on though. Honestly, they did farming and ran delis, and the women wore like, you know, sack dresses and stuff. It was okay. It would not be for me, but it was okay at least. And then there are people just let you camp in their yard. Right, this is that guy's yard. Guys up all his tents, he got no bathroom for you. He goes, he's 80 years old, he's been doing this for 40 years. He says, why, you just go back there in the corner. That's where everybody pees. But if you gotta do anything else, go down to the gas station. I'm not making any of this up, people, either. I'm not making anything up. This was in Delaware Water Gap, this hostel, the Yellow House Hostel was called. And I didn't stay there because this Finnish guy named Ketchup I met just like a half a day before, and he had the norovirus, the norovirus. I don't want to say about that guy, okay? You don't want that, all right? So I went on to the Presbyterian Church of the Mountain, where it's an actual church, and they let people stay in the bunks in the basement and set up tents outside. So see what I mean? All along the trail, the communities are all in on this, right? And churches and just regular people invite the hikers in. And there's some good economics going on because there's a lot of hikers going by, but it's also just some great generosity. Weird little hotel just really right off the trail that Iris and I stayed in. I mean, it was really a weird little hotel. This was a Civil War era home, a bed and breakfast. They let the filthy hikers stay in the basement. And it was like bed and breakfast people staying there too. It was pretty interesting. They made us bring our packs in garbage bags. It was not a bad idea. There were hikers that were offended by that. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Look at you. They had a shower by the back door. They said, put your pack in this bag and take a shower before you go any further. Well, that's terrible. Well, I thought it was a good shower, actually. Not complaining. Now that looks like a hostel, don't it? Waynesboro. Nice place, though. Really nice hostel. The guitars had strings. This one is just off in the woods, a Boots Off hostel there. And this one, the people, they had been hikers. They built this little cabin on their property for hikers to stay. It's just, I don't know, like 100 meters off the trail. And I stayed there too. It's a very nice, quiet place to stay. My favorite hostel, Standing Bear Hostel. It's got such a nice Middle Earth kind of vibe going on there, as you can well see. But here's the thing, see, I was coming out of the Smoky Mountains. It rained all day. It was cold, wet rain. And honestly, the trail of the Smokies is really eroded. So it's just like a river running down the trail, you know. So you come down that trail, walking through water. I got to this place, and there was a bunkhouse with a wood stove. You can see the pipe coming out the roof there. And you put a Minnesota boy in a room with a wood stove, and there's going to be a fire in it pretty quick. And there was. I built a fire in that, and it warmed up and dried out. They had a nice meal they put on there. It's fantastic. Now we got to talk about trail magic, which is, I don't know if this happens anywhere else, but because the density of people on the AT, other people see an opportunity to do some good. And they just set up and they give you things. I was a little uncomfortable with this. I thought, I'm on vacation, right? I mean, why are you giving me this cold drink and this hot food? And I took it. But I felt weird about it. This guy, he's not even a hiker. Every year he set up for 2 weeks. For 9 years he's done this. And just give away stuff to hikers. And you'd have this guy in the back of his truck. Remember him, Iceman? He was following some hikers, helping them out. He was just giving out cold drinks and snacks on the trail in the back of his truck. And this was a couple of families were set up because they had family members that were hiking. And so they were like, you know, in honor of their hiker relative, they were feeding everybody. I stayed at this area for 2 nights. I had 3 meals there. I really did. And anyway, so trail magic, it's a special thing. I don't know how you do that, but if the North Country Trail really develops it, people start walking through town, you just got to think about how to, make that happen. Because that's just really cool. I know there's people on the trail, I admit it. 5,000 of them register their hikes, and who knows how many don't register because they don't want the government knowing what they're up to. Government got no reason to know that I'm on the Appalachian Trail. And actually, I heard a story about a guy who robbed a bank and all he had in his backpack was money. And he hid amongst the hikers. Right? But we're just talking about normal people who don't want to register their hike, but that's okay. But so there are people on the trail. These were 3 of my favorite people that I met and spent some time with. I hiked alone, except when I had family members with me, which covered about a month and a half of the hike. But I hiked alone, usually really alone all day, but I get to camp, there'd be other people there. And I got to know some folks. And then for different periods of time, there'd be a group of people I would see really regularly. Then we get out of sync because of taking 0 days, days off. And I might not see him again for quite a while. So the first guy here, his name was Metalman. He was a welding engineer. I didn't know there was a welding engineer. I didn't know that was the thing. He said, yeah, nobody knew that until the Deepwater Horizon accident. Then all of a sudden, everybody knew that there were people that were supposed to design and plan welds so that they wouldn't fail at the bottom of the ocean, right? And leak a bunch of oil everywhere. So I met him, and this guy in the middle, his name is Coffee. Looks like he could use some coffee. And I hiked with him for quite a bit, actually. And I don't know what happened with him. I don't know if he finished. I know that Metal Man, the welding engineer, he did not finish. He got hurt, actually, a couple of times. I shouldn't laugh. Well, I got hurt a couple of times too. But I was luckier than he was, because everywhere I got hurt, I had relatives. When I broke my rib in Maine, my brother-in-law lives in Maine. I just went to stay with him. See? So there's good luck, and then there's bad luck, and there's bad luck with some good luck mixed in. And then the guy on the end, his name is Banquet. He's one of the Skittles kids. When I met them, they were having Starburst for breakfast. Yeah, there were like 8 of them, kind of, just out of college age kind of kids. And they hiked really fast, but they took really long breaks. They'd take off like 2 days. And so then I would see them again. I saw them for months, actually. I run into these guys. There were like 8 of them. I see them usually like 4 at a time. So the people on the trail, including my son Amos, who started with me and finished with me about 2 or 3 weeks at each end. My daughter Iris, who joined me for a week in Rocksylvania. My brother Rob, who came and hiked with me for a week in Maryland. But we spent most of that week getting over COVID at my sister's house in Baltimore, which he had brought with him from California. Thanks, Rob. And yeah, and then there are other people. These 2 guys there in that picture, 2 German guys. The one guy didn't speak English, but boy, did he like to talk. Amos better. And the other guy spoke English, but he got tired of interpreting real quick. So he just kind of shrugged and said, he's just going to keep talking, and it doesn't matter what he said. But they were great. I enjoyed them quite a bit. And then look at these 3 guys, the 3 amigos. The youngsters loved to see us. I think we were kind of interchangeable to them. And I hung out with these guys for about 3 weeks in New York and New Jersey. The one guy is named, this guy here, his name is Crazy Cop. He'd say, I'm not crazy and I'm not a cop. What do you think he was? Shriner. Yeah, they drove little police cars in the parades, and they called himself crazy cops, see? That's why I got that name. And he couldn't hear, he had bad hearing, he was in his 70s. And he had hearing aids, but he didn't wear them when he was hiking. So you talk to him, he just, like a puppy, he's got to tip his head. There's this one German woman though, who would yell at him to put his hearing aids in. I won't talk to you unless you put your hearing aids in. And he put it in for her, you know, and it wouldn't go for me. But he put it in at night, we could have a conversation. But so he finished not too many days before me. And he was coming down Katahdin, because you're gonna hike 5 miles down. And he fell and broke 5 ribs. Right at the end. 5 ribs. Man, so great stuff. Yeah, people on the trail. So okay, come on there. Here we go. Oh, well, this is one of my favorite things. People would make these mileage signs, right? Oh man, I live for these. Right, 200 miles. That was at Klingman's Dome. 350. They make them out of whatever's laying around. You see, 400. Yeah, you saw that coming, didn't you? 600. And the 700 one, I messed it up. You can't see it, but that says 700. There are actually 3 different 700 mile markers, like it's a competition or something. It's kind of weird. 800. There's also an 800 one made out of pine cones. That's my favorite one. Yeah. And then the last one I have a picture of is 900 miles. But there were some more. There's one near the end that said 200 miles. There was 200 miles left. Man, that was something to tell you when I saw that. Yeah. So are there curiosities? For me, there's in the Appalachian Trail, there's something called the green tunnel. There's so many leaves you can't see out, right? You're in this tunnel of green. I like that. And fortunately, I noticed a lot of other stuff, like these trail markers. I don't know what you're supposed to make of that. But the white ones are for the Appalachian Trail. And this guy carried his dog for a couple 100 miles. That's curious. It's this ugly old dog. It's real old and real ugly both. The guy's like, well, you know, I wasn't sure he'd still be alive when I got back. So second, there are all these bricks, these stone walls from the Civil War, even the colonial era, all the way from Virginia, all the way up into Maine. I really enjoyed those. Somebody found these rocks shaped like hearts and left them out. I'd see them every, I don't know, fairly frequently. I would see these heart rocks. I really look forward to seeing them. A couple times I found heart rocks myself and put them out. It was not the same. I just felt bad. So I stopped doing that, you know. So somebody had started that, and that was their shtick. And that was good enough for me, the heart rocks. I like those heart rocks a lot though. There's a snapper turtle. Was hiking. There wasn't a pond nearby or lake or anything. There's a little stream about a mile. He was heading that way, about another mile he had to go. I had no idea where he came from. Big snapper, man. Could eat them. This is a railroad crossing where you can catch a train to New York City. There's a little kiosk. You can buy a ticket from the Appalachian Trail to New York City. I met 2 people who went to New York City for a Grateful Dead concert, and they both got COVID. Not kidding. Yeah, spider web. And my favorite curiosity on the entire Appalachian Trail, the donkey. Yeah, this is that secret shelter. Did you go there? Secret shelter? Was there a donkey there then? No, there's a donkey there now. So I tried to eat my food. But we still got along. Okay. Almost done. So this is the view from the top of Mount Katahdin. I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I have no idea because I'm not sure what time we started. Are we okay? Well, we're wrapping up here. Okay, we're wrapping up, folks. So at the top of Mount Katahdin, the ranger said there's more than 12 people there, so we should head down. And people just kept showing up. There are 40 people registered to summit that day. And this is a panoramic shot, so it's a little bit distorted, but that's how it looks up there. And that's how it looks when you're going up there, 5 miles up. And so that's the trail. That's the trail. There's yet more trail. And I got to this point, I thought, surely that's the top. It wasn't the top. So you climb up there too. And then you can find it like a mile or so away. You can see the top of, you see Baxter Peak, the top of Mount Katahdin. So we got up there, we got this picture, the picture that we long for, right? If you hike the Appalachian Trail, you know, the corroboration that you succeeded at this crazy endeavor. So, yeah. And then there's this guy that will make this kind of faux, a watercolor picture of your summit image. If you send it to him, he'll track you down on Facebook and ask if you want one, and he'll make that. I think it's pretty cool, actually. So now just a little short bit of song to wrap this up, okay? See what we got here. Okay. As I was out walking the Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine, Horizon sent me a signal with a message from an old friend back home. And he asked me, why do you hike for no money? Do you really just walk all day? You ain't getting nowhere, you're just growing your hair. Ah, you must all be crazy out there. But he's never climbed on Clingman's Dome, never seen the ravens on the wing, never saw spring hit the Blue Ridge Divine, and he never heard old Huckleberry sing. Yodelady, oh, lo, 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 tee, lo, 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 tee, lo, 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 tee, yodelady, oh, lo, 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 tee, yodelay, yodelo, lo, tee. Thank you very much.